Stop recording video. Button. Speech off.
All right. Good day, everybody. Whoa. We're going to try this again. Oops. I did this earlier, and, of course, in typical blind guy fashion, didn't realize the video turned off for some reason, so I read the whole book and barely got through the first page before the video quit. So if it does that again, well, I guess I'll read it a third time. Anyway, before something disastrous happens, let's get this show on the road. We've got here, oh, by the way, happy July, My Weirder School, book number 4 of the Weirder section series, Mr. Burke Is Berserk, by Dan Gutman. And as per the usual, the dedication is to Emma, whoever she is. Table of Contents, Chapter 1, The Big Race, Chapter 2, A Seesaw Battle, Chapter 3, The T Word, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, 3 Little Letters, Chapter 5, The Class Pencil, Chapter 6, Mr. Burke Goes Berserk, Chapter 7, Gold Fever, Chapter 8, Gilver, Chapter 9, The Gold Rush, Chapter 10, Violins Are Bad for Children, and Chapter 11, The Duel. Alrighty, without any further ado, we have presented to you by yours truly, Bradley D. Wettlaufer, My Weirder School by Dan Gutman. Here we go. Chapter 1, The Big Race. My name is AJ, and I hate ice cream. Actually, that's not true. I love ice cream. In fact, it's one of my favorite things in the world. I was just pulling your leg. No, I wasn't doing that either. If I was pulling your leg, I would actually have to take your leg and pull on it. Why would anybody want to do that? That's a weird thing to do. Speaking of weird things, last week the weirdest thing in the history of the world happened. When I got to school, our groundskeeper, Mr. Burke, was sitting out in the playground on a riding lawnmower. Well, that's not the weird part, because Mr. Burke is always sitting on a riding lawnmower. The weird part was that right next to him was our principal, Mr. Klutz. He was also sitting on a riding lawnmower. All the kids gathered around to see what was going on. I went over to my break. What are you looking down here for? The story's up there, dumbhead. End of break. Friends, Ryan, Michael, Neil, and Alessia. What's going on? I asked. Mr. Klutz and Mr. Burke are going to have a lawnmower race, said Michael, who never ties his shoes. The first one to reach the monkey bars wins, said Ryan, who will eat anything, even stuff that isn't food. Lawnmower races rock, said Alessia, who's a girl, but is cool anyway. The loser has to pay the winner $1, said Neil, the nude kid. Who we call the nude kid, even though he wears clothes. Mr. Klutz and Mr. Burke revved their motors of their lawnmowers and glared at each other. Get ready to lose, partner, shouted Mr. Burke. I reckon I'm gonna give you a thumping you'll never forget. He talks funny. He had a toothpick in his mouth, too. What's up with that? Kiss my grass, yelled Mr. Klutz. You're going down, Mr. Burke. That's when Andrea Young, this annoying girl with curly brown hair, came over. She was with her equally annoying crybaby friend, Emily. Hi, Arlo, said Andrea. She calls me by my real name because she knows I don't like it. I didn't say hello to Andrea because I knew the guys would start teasing me and saying I was in love with her. They shouldn't have dangerous races and gamble on school property, Andrea told us. It sets a bad example for children. I agree, said Emily, who agrees with everything Andrea says. Can you possibly be more boring? Asked Alessia. Andrea stuck out her tongue at Alessia. Alessia stuck out her tongue at Andrea. Emily stuck out her tongue at Alessia. Alessia stuck out her tongue at Emily. Whenever somebody says something mean to you, you always stick out your tongue. That's the first rule of being a kid. I'm not boring, Andrea said. I just don't like violence. What do you have against violins? I asked. Everybody laughed, even though I didn't say anything really funny. Not violins, Arlo, Andrea said, rolling her eyes. Violence. Oh. Why can't a truckload of violins fall on her head? Our gym teacher, Miss Small, came running out in front of the lawnmowers. She was carrying a big flag. On your mark, she yelled. Get set, go! She waved the flag. Mr. Klutz and Mr. Burke took off. Break. Ha ha! Made you look down. End break. Chapter 2. A seesaw battle. The lawnmower race was hilarious because lawnmowers go really, really slow. I mean, I can walk faster than those things. It was like watching turtles race, but it was still exciting and everybody was yelling and screaming. Put the pedal to the metal, Mr. Klutz. You can beat him, Mr. Burke. We all walked alongside the lawnmowers so we could see who was winning. First, Mr. Klutz took the lead. Then Mr. Burke took the lead. Then Mr. Klutz was ahead. Then Mr. Burke was ahead. This is a real seesaw battle, shouted Ryan. Are they going to fight on the seesaw? I asked. That would be cool. Break. After but a never mind, it's not a break. I take it back, it's a page break. After about 1,100,000 minutes, the lawnmowers reached the other end of the playground. Mr. Burke jumped off his machine and touched the monkey bars first. Yeehaw! He shouted. I'm grinning like a weasel in a hen house. Mr. Klutz gave Mr. Burke $1. All the excitement was over, and we had to go into school to start the day. Bummer in the summer. Mr. Burke is weird, I said as we walked to class. Remember the time he grew a corn maze on the soccer field? Asked Neil. Remember the time he mowed big circles in the grass and told us they had been made by UFOs? Asked Michael. Maybe Mr. Burke isn't really a groundskeeper at all, I said. Maybe he kidnapped the real groundskeeper and locked him in the equipment shed where he keeps the lawnmowers. Stuff like that happens all the time, you know. Stop trying to scare Emily, said Andrea. I'm not scared, said Emily. Mr. Burke probably escaped from a loony bin, said Ryan. Yeah, I said. He probably snatches kids during recess and buries them under the monkey bars. We gotta do something, Emily shouted. Then she started freaking out and went running down the hallway. Sheesh, get a grip. That girl will fall for anything. Chapter 3, the T word. The rest of us walked to class with our teacher, Mr. Granite, who was from another planet. After we put our backpacks into our cubbies and pledged the allegiance, it was time for math. But you'll never believe who poked his head into the door at that moment. Nobody. Nah. Poking your head into a door would hurt, but you'll never believe who poked his head into the doorway. It was Mr. Klutz. To what do we owe the pleasure of your company? Asked Mr. Granite. That's grown-up speak for, what are you doing here? Remember when I went to principal camp last year? He said. Well, I have to go again. I just wanted to say goodbye. Bye, we all said. Principal camp sounds cool. I'll bet the principal will sit around a campfire and toast marshmallows. Maybe I'll be a principal when I grow up, so I can go to camp and eat toasted marshmallows. After Mr. Klutz left, Mr. Granite went to the front of the room. It's time for math, he said. Turn to page 23 in your but he didn't get the chance to finish his sentence because at that moment, an announcement came over the loudspeaker. All classes, please report to the all-purpose room immediately. Not again, moaned Mr. Granite. Yay, no math, I yelled. Whoop whoop. We had to walk 1,100,000 miles to the all-purpose room. Along the way, we saw our art teacher, Miss Hannah, and our music teacher, Mr. Loring. They were each pulling a rolling suitcase. Why did you bring suitcases to school? Ryan asked them. We take them with us wherever we go, said Miss Hannah, because you never know when you're going to get fired. We like to be ready, added Mr. Loring. Miss Hannah and Mr. Loring are weird. In the all-purpose room, our class got to sit in the front row, but I had to sit next to annoying Andrea. Ugh, disgusting. I made sure not to let my elbow touch hers on the armrest so I wouldn't catch her girl germs. Ugh. The vice principal, Mrs. Jaffe, was on stage. She held up her hand and made the peace sign, which means, shut up! I'll be in charge while Mr. Klutz is gone, she told us. We have a we have a special guest who we would like to speak with us today. How about a big round of applause for Mayor Hubble? We all clapped our hands in circles. I don't know how you do that, but way to go. Mayor Hubble came down the aisle with 2 Secret Service agents behind him. He was smiling, passing out buttons that said, Re-elect Mayor Hubble, and shaking hands with everybody he passed. It'd be cool to be the mayor. He's like the king of the town. My friend Billy, who lives around the corner, told me that Mayor Hubble has a limo and a big throne. At City Hall, guys carry the mayor around in a chair, and girls in bikinis feed him grapes. Mayor Hubble climbed up on the stage. I have bad news, he announced. The town's broke. The government cut off all of our money, but we still have to balance the budget. I didn't know what he was talking about. Does this mean you're going to raise taxes? Asked Mrs. Jaffe. Taxes? Mayor Hubble suddenly groaned, grabbed his chest, and dropped to his knees. It looked like he was going to die. One of his Secret Service agents rushed over to help the mayor. The other one leaned over to talk to Mrs. Jaffe. Never say the T word in front of the mayor, he told her. Mayor Hubble leaned into the microphone. I will not raise taxes, he shouted. I'm going to lower taxes. If we don't have enough money, asked Mrs. Jaffe, shouldn't you raise, the T word? Read my lips, Mayor Hubble shouted. No new taxes. Why do we need to read your lips? I asked. You're talking out loud. That's just an expression, Arlo, Andrea told me, rolling her eyes again. I don't understand, said Mrs. Jaffe. How can we get the money to balance the budget if we don't raise, the T word? I have an idea, said Mrs. Rupee, our media specialist. We could have a car wash. We could raise the money, balance the budget, and have fun all at the same time. Yeah, everybody shouted excitedly. No, said Mayor Hubble. How about a bake sale? Asked Ms. Laney, our speech teacher. People love to buy cookies and cakes. No, said the mayor. A raffle? Suggested our reading specialist, Mr. Mackey. No, said the Mayor Hubble. Why not just close down the school, I suggested. That would save money. Then we could stay home and play video games all day. All the kids cheered at my idea. No, said Mayor Hubble. There's only one one way to balance the budget. I can tell you that in just 3 letters. Chapter 4. 3 little letters. The 3 little letters were C-U-T. Cuts! Mayor Hubble shouted into the microphone. We need to cut the amount of money we spend so we can balance the budget. Just saying the word cut seemed to make Mayor Hubble's eyes light up with excitement. He had a crazy look on his face, the kind of look that evil geniuses in the movies have when they explain how they're going to take over the world. The first thing we're going to cut, Mayor Hubble told us, are the art and music programs. So long, said Mrs. Hannah, taking her rolling suitcase. I'm out of here. Right behind you, said Mr. Loring. But we love art and music, one of the kids shouted. You kids are here to learn, said the mayor, not to sit around drawing pictures and singing silly songs. That's just a big waste of money. Everybody looked really sad when Miss Hannah and Mr. Loring walked out of the all-purpose room. The next things we need to cut are school supplies, said Mayor Hubble. So, from now on, we're going to stop buying glue sticks, rulers, erasers, tape, and markers. You can have 1 pencil per classroom. That's off the wall, yelled Miss Small. Oh, stop whining, said Mayor Hubble. This will improve everyone's schoolwork. If the students only have 1 pencil, they'll make fewer mistakes. What about crayons? Asked Mrs. Hawley, our Spanish teacher. No more crayons, said the mayor. You can melt candles down and make crayons. That'll save us a lot of money. That's loopy, yelled Mrs. Rupee. The mayor pulled a piece of paper out of his pocket to remind himself of the other things he was going to cut. Starting today, he announced, I'm turning off the water fountains in the hallways. Do you know what the biggest waste of water in the world is? Water fountains. The water just shoots right out of them. That's bizarre, yelled Miss Lazar, our custodian. Oh, give me a break, Mayor Hubble said. It's not like people need water to live or anything. And I know you kids just go to the water fountain when you don't want to sit in class. You're not fooling anybody. Well, he was right about that. That's daffy, yelled Mrs. Jaffe. From now on, the mayor continued, there will be no more toilet paper in the bathroom. That stuff costs way too much money. You're getting rid of toilet paper? Shouted Alessia. What are we supposed to use? Post-it notes, said the mayor. That's loony, yelled Mrs. Cooney, the school nurse, and disgusting. From now on, the teachers will have their pay cut in half, the mayor continued. You teachers make way too much money. Teachers get paid? That was a new one on me. I thought they just came to school every day because they had no place else to go. But we hardly make any money as it is, yelled Mrs. Yonkers, our computer teacher. What do you teach? Mayor Hubble asked. Mrs. Yonkers. I'm the computer teacher. Well, you're fired, said the mayor. I'm replacing you with a computer. A computer should be able to teach a computer class much better than a human being anyway. And computers don't whine and complain like people do. He's off his rocker, yelled Mr. Docker, our science teacher. You crybaby teachers should be thankful you have jobs at all, said the mayor. Oh, and I want the coffee machine and the hot tub removed from the teacher's lounge. We don't have a hot tub in the teacher's lounge, said Mrs. Jaffe. You don't? Said the mayor. Then put a hot tub in there, teacher's lounge, and then take it out. We have no money to spend on silly things like hot tubs for teachers' lounges. "He's loco," said Mrs. Coco, the gifted and talented teacher. Mayor Hubble was getting more and more excited as he talked about all the cuts he was going to make. "After we get rid of the hot tub in the teacher's lounge," he said, "get rid of the tables and chairs in there. Sell them on eBay." "Do you expect teachers to sit on the floor?" asked Mr. Granite. "Yes," said Mayor Hubble. "It'll be like a picnic every day. You like picnics, don't you?" "Who doesn't like picnics?" "He's gone mad," said Dr. Brad, the school counselor. He's got a good name. "Come to think of it," said the mayor, "why do you teachers need a lounge anyway? You don't have time for lounging around in hot tubs and having picnics. This is a school, not some beach resort." "But we don't have a hot tub," yelled Miss Laney, our speech teacher. "Not anymore you won't," said the mayor. "Not after I get rid of the one we're putting in. All these cuts will help balance the budget. And when the voters see how much money I saved, they'll vote to re-elect me in November." "Are you going to take a pay cut too?" asked Mrs. Jaffe. "Don't be silly," the mayor exclaimed. "I'm giving myself a raise for coming up with this great, genius idea to save money." "That makes no sense," yelled Officer Spence, our security guard. "We need pencils and glue sticks and erasers and pencils and fountains and toilet paper. We need tables and chairs. We need all these things that you're going to cut." "Yeah!" shouted all the teachers. "If Mr. Klutz was here, he would never allow any of this," said Mr. Granite. "That's right," shouted the teachers. "Well, Mr. Klutz isn't here, is he?" asked Mayor Hubble. "He's at principal camp." Everybody was really mad, and you'll never believe who poked his head into the door at that moment. Nobody poking your head into a door is dumb. I thought we went over this last chapter, but you'll never believe who poked his head into the doorway. It was Mr. Burke, the groundskeeper. "I mowed the lawn," said Mr. Burke. Break. "No, it wasn't Mr. Klutz. Nice try, though." End break. "I trimmed the bushes. I've been busier than a one-armed man hanging wallpaper, and I am a plumb tuckered out. What do you want me to do next?" "Next?" asked Mayor Hubble. "The next thing you can do is go home. There's no money in the budget for a groundskeeper anymore. So, you're fired. Have a nice day." I think that was the moment Mr. Burke officially went berserk. Chapter 5. The Class Pencil. None of us could believe that Mr. Burke had been fired. Who would mow the lawn? Who would trim the bushes? Who would rake the leaves in the fall and shovel snow in the winter? Mr. Burke didn't say a word. He just stood up and walked slowly out the doorway. When we got back to class, I looked out the window and saw Mr. Burke sitting all by himself on the monkey bars in the playground. It was sad. "Okay, it's time for math," said Mr. Granite. "Get out your pencils and turn to page 23 in your books. Do the first problem and write the answer in your notebook." I hate math." "I don't have a pencil," said Ryan. "Me neither," said Michael. "My pencil's gone," said Neil the nude kid. "Somebody stole my pencil too," said Alessia. "Somebody took all of our pencils," said Andrea. It was true. All of our pencils were gone. Our glue sticks, tape, erasers, and rulers were gone too. "Somebody stole our stuff!" I shouted. "Who would steal school supplies?" asked Andrea. "Mayor Hubble," said Mr. Granite. "He's probably going to sell our school supplies on eBay so he can balance the budget." "Wow," I said. "He didn't waste any time. Mayor Hubble is mean, said Emily. That may be true, but we still have to do something that we can't read. Math, said Mr. Granite. There's one pencil on my desk. We'll just have to share the class pencil. Can I use the class pencil first? Asked Little Miss Perfect. I already know the answer to the first problem. Andrea always knows the answer to every problem. I hate her. I want the class pencil first, I shouted. Please, Mr. Granite. I didn't even want the dumb pencil. I just didn't want Little Miss Know-it-all to get it. Andrea and AJ may share the class pencil, said Mr. Granite, then pass it down the next person. Ooh, Ryan said, AJ and Andrea are going to share the class pencil. They must be in love. When are you going to get married? Michael asked. If those guys weren't my best friends, I'd hate them. Andrea snatched the pencil from Mr. Granite before I could get it. I grabbed the other end of the pencil. I get to use the class pencil first, Arlo, said Andrea. No, I shouted at her. We're supposed to share it. Me. No, me. Both of you. Knock it. Mr. Granite didn't get a chance to finish his sentence because at that moment, the weirdest thing in the history of the world happened. Snap! The class pencil broke in half. Look what you did, Arlo, shouted Andrea. You broke the class pencil. I didn't break it, I shouted back at her. You broke it. I did not. Did too. Now we can't do math, said Michael. Yay, said Ryan. No math. Whoop whoop. Mr. Granite. Arlo broke the class pencil. On purpose, so we wouldn't have to do math, Andrea yelled. I did not. Did too. Andrea started hitting me, and I hit her back. Stop, shouted Mr. Granite. I will not have violence in my classroom. What do you have against violins, I asked. Not violins, Arlo, said Andrea, rolling her eyes. Violence. Oh, that sounds a lot like violins to me. Forget the class pencil, said Mr. Granite. We'll use the whiteboard. You kids will not get out of doing math. I had to admit that breaking the class pencil to get out of doing math wasn't a bad idea. I wish I had thought of it. But that gave me another idea. Mr. Granite, I said, can I go get a drink from of water? Mayor Hubble turned off the water fountain, he replied. Remember? Oh, yeah, I said. May I go to the boys' room? Do you really have to go to the boys' room, AJ? Mr. Granite asked. Or are you just trying to get out of math? I really have to go, I lied. Well, okay, said Mr. Granite. Here, take some Post-it notes with you. I was about to walk out the doorway when the weirdest thing in the history of the world happened. It was the recess bell. Yay, no math. It was the greatest moment of my life. Chapter 6. Mr. Burke Goes Berserk. When we went out to the playground for recess, two big guys were there. They were sawing off the bottom of the monkey bars. When they finished, they picked them up. Hey! Do you want to know the surprise ending to the story? Well, I'm not going to tell you. So, na-na-na-boo-boo on you. They picked the whole thing up and started carrying it away. Where are you taking our monkey bars, I asked. To rent a monkey bar, one of the guys replied. You can rent anything. They also took away our swings, slides, climbing wall, kickballs, volleyball nets, soccer goal, and jump ropes. They even took the tetherball pole out of the ground. Then they threw all the stuff into a big truck and drove away with it. We were sad. There was nothing to do. What fun's recess when you have nothing to play with? Mayor Hubble is mean, said Andrea. And for once, I agreed with her. We wandered around the playground until we saw Mr. Burke come out of the equipment shed. He had something in his hand. Why is he still here? Asked Alessia. Mayor Hubble fired him. What's he holding? Asked Ryan. It looks like a chainsaw, said Andrea. A chainsaw? We all started freaking out. Mr. Burke is crazy, I yelled. He must have snapped, yelled Neil the nude kid. He's trying to kill everybody in the school, yelled Ryan. It'll be just like the movies. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, yelled Michael. Mr. Burke pulled a cord to start up the chainsaw, and it made a loud noise like a motorcycle. We have to do something, yelled Emily. We were about to run out inside and warn the teachers when Mr. Burke went over to the biggest bush in the playground. Wait a minute, said Andrea. He's not going to kill anybody. He's going to trim the bushes. Andrea was right, as usual. Mr. Burke started cutting the side of the big bush with the chainsaw. He carefully cut into one side, and then he went around and cut the other side. Why is he trimming? Emily started to say. He's not trimming it, Andrea said. He's making a sculpture. He's making a bush sculpture. She was right, again, and Mr. Burke wasn't just making any sculpture. As he cut into the bush with his chainsaw, we could see he was making a sculpture of a person, and as he continued to cutting, we could see the person wasn't just any person. It's Mayor Hubble, shouted Alessia. She was right, too. The bush looked just like the mayor. Mr. Burke is weird, said Ryan. Andrea had on her worried face, so I knew she was going to say something about her mother and psychologists. I'm worried, said Andrea. My mother is a psychologist. She would say that Mr. Burke is obsessed with Mayor Hubble. He needs to move on with his life and get a new job. I agree, said Emily, who always agrees with everything Andrea says. Mr. Burke put the finishing touches on his sculpture. Then he put the chainsaw back into the shed and came out with a shovel. What's he doing now? Asked Neil the nude kid. Mr. Burke went over to where the monkey bars used to be. Then he started digging a hole in the ground with a shovel. See? It's like I told you, I said. He must be digging up the bodies of the kids he murdered. Arlo, stop trying to scare Emily, said Andrea. I'm scared, said Emily. Maybe he'll dig up some zombies, said Ryan. They'll come back to life and chase us around the playground. And if they catch us, they'll eat our brains, said Michael. I saw that in a movie once. Emily started freaking out. Zombies don't eat brains, dumbhead, said Alessia. Cannibal zombies do, I told her. Especially cannibal zombies from outer space. We've got to do something, yelled Emily, and then she went running away. Sheesh! What a crybaby. The rest of us kept watching Mr. Burke, digging with his shovel. First, he would dig one hole, and then he would dig another nearby, and then another one. I think he's looking for something, said Ryan. Maybe he's digging up the Underground Railroad, I suggested. We learned about that in class with Mr. Granite. The Underground Railroad wasn't underground, Arlo, Andrea said, rolling her eyes. Then why do they call it underground? I asked. Because it was hidden, Andrea said. They didn't want people to know about it. Your face should be hidden, I told Andrea. Then we wouldn't have to look at it. "Oh, snap," said Ryan. Andrea was trying to think of something mean to say to me, but she never got the chance because that's when the weirdest thing in the history of the world happened. Mr. Burke's shovel hit something sharp. Ping! He must have broke off a piece of rock. He got down on his hands and knees and picked it up. He was looking at it very carefully. Then he took a magnifying glass out of his pocket and looked through it. He turned the rock over and over in his hand. And then he stood up and yelled, "It's gold!" Chapter 7. Gold Fever. "Gold!" shouted Ryan. "Gold!" shouted Michael. "Gold!" shouted Neil the nude kid. "Gold!" I shouted. Just in case you were wondering, we were all shouting, "Gold!" Kids from every corner of the playground came running over to see what was going on. Mr. Burke found gold! Mr. Burke found gold! Mr. Burke found gold! Mr. Burke found gold! In case you were wondering, lots of kids were talking about how Mr. Burke found gold. Everybody crowded around him as he held up the chunk of gold. "Well, I'll be dogged," Mr. Burke said. "My great-great-grandpappy lived over yonder back in 48. He told me there was a heap of gold left in the ground after the big gold rush ended, and I reckon it was right here." Mrs. Jaffe came running out to the playground. "What's all the fuss about?" she asked. "Mr. Burke found a piece of gold where the monkey bars used to be," I told her. "I always figured there was gold down there," he said, "but I couldn't get at it on account of them dang monkey bars. Is it okay with y'all if I do a little digging out here?" "You betcha," said Mrs. Jaffe. "Dig, baby, dig." Our reading specialist, Mr. Mackey, came running out of the school. He was pushing a wheelbarrow. "Did somebody say gold?" he asked, all excited. "Where did you get a wheelbarrow?" Ryan asked Mr. Mackey. "From Rent a Wheelbarrow," said Mr. Mackey. "You can rent anything." Suddenly, the other teachers came running out of the school. Miss Coco, Miss Holly, Mr. Docker, Miss Small, all of them. They were wearing overalls and miners' helmets. Some of them were carrying pickaxes, shovels, and pans. I guess they rented those too. "Yeehaw!" they all shouted. "Gold!" Don't any of you have classes to teach?" asked Andrea. "Classes?" shouted our librarian, Mrs. Rupee. "Who cares about classes? There's gold in them thar hills. And I'm a-fixin' to fetch it." "Dag nabbit," said our speech teacher, Ms. Laney. "Yeehaw!" shouted Mr. Granite. Why is everybody suddenly talking like it's the Wild West? I asked. "'Cause we got the gold fever, young feller," said Mr. Mackey. "It drives a man crazy. I tell you, crazy. I'm a crazier than a run-over coon," shouted our health teacher, Mrs. Leakey. "I'm crazier than a popcorn on a hot stove," shouted Mr. Granite. "Yee-haw!" shouted Miss Coco. Grown-ups are weird. The teacher started digging holes all over the place and saying words I never heard before, like tarnation and varmint and ornery. Me and the other kids just watched them. At least it was better than going to class. "I found me a nugget, y'all!" Miss Holly suddenly yelled. "Yee-haw! A chicken nugget?" I asked. No, a gold nugget. That's funny. I always thought that nuggets came from chickens. We all gathered around to look at Miss Holly's nugget. Look at the way it shines, she said. That there nugget is as purty as a snake on stilts, said Mrs. Rupee. I reckon this may be the biggest gold strike in over 100 years, said Mr. Burke. The teachers let out a big yeehaw and started digging all over the place with even more excitement. I found one too, shouted Miss Small. So did I, said Mr. Granite. They were all uncovering gold. That's when a big black car pulled up to the playground, and you'll never guess who got out of it. It was Mayor Hubble, and he was coming over. Suddenly, all the teachers stopped digging. Mayor Hubble is staring at the teachers. The teachers were staring at Mr. Hubble. The kids were staring at the teachers and at Mayor Hubble. Everybody was staring at each other. You could hear a pin drop. I was sure Mayor Hubble was going to tell them to stop digging and go back to class, but he didn't. Dig, he hollered. Keep digging. Break. Not really, but that's what everybody says when it's quiet. Nobody knows why. End break. Chapter 8. Gilver. When I got to school the next morning, the front door was locked. I went around to the playground and it was filled with teachers. They were digging holes with shovels, pickaxes, and all kinds of mining equipment. I met up with the guys and Alessia. Mrs. Rupee came by on a donkey. Where did you get a donkey? I asked her. It's not a donkey, Mrs. Rupee said. It's a burro. His name is Jose. Where'd you get a burro? Michael asked her. From Rent-A-Burro, she said. You can rent anything. As we got closer, we saw the weirdest thing in the history of the world. Mr. Mackey, Mr. Burke, Mr. Docker, and Officer Spence all had long beards on their faces. None of them had beards the day before. How'd you grow a beard so fast? Ryan asked Mr. Mackey. It's the gold fever, he replied. A crazy look in his eyes. It does that to a man. We sat and watched the teachers digging. They were all shouting, "Yeehaw!" and calling each other partner. That's when annoying Andrea and Emily came over. This is terrible, Andrea said. The teacher should be inside the school helping us learn things, not out here digging for gold. That's right, said Emily. What is their problem? Can you possibly be more boring? Asked Alessia. Yeah, take a chill pill, I told Andrea. We get a day off of school. Mr. Burke seemed to know a lot about gold mining, and he was telling the teachers where to dig and what to do. I reckon we need to dig a deeper hole to get at the gold, he told them. Fetch me the dynamite, fellers. They're going to blow a hole in the playground? Asked Andrea. That sounds dangerous. Is violence really necessary? What do violins have to do with it? I asked. Not violins, Arlo. Violence. Mr. Burke and Mr. Mackey dug a deeper hole where the monkey bars used to be and put sticks of dynamite in there. Then they stretched a wire from the hole to the other end of the playground. Y'all cover your ears now, Mr. Burke hollered. Then he yelled, Fire in the hole! And pushed down on this handle thing that looked like a bicycle pump. We all covered our ears. there was a huge blast. Rocks and dirt went flying all over the place. It was awesome. We got to see it live and in person. You should have been there. Wow, we all said. Which is Mom upside down. Blowing stuff up is cool. There should be a TV channel that shows nothing but stuff being blown up all day long. The explosion blew a giant hole in the ground. The teachers all ran over, yelling, "Yeehaw!" They climbed into the hole with their shovels and picks. "You kids want to come down into the mine with us and poke around?" Mr. Burke asked us. "Yeah," said me and the guys and Alessia. "I don't want to get my school clothes dirty," said Andrea. "Me neither," said Emily. "Could you possibly be more boring?" asked Alessia. The rest of us climbed into the mine with Mr. Burke. It was dark down there, but some of the teachers had lights on their helmets, so we could see. They were digging for a long time, but nobody found any gold. And then Mr. Burke suddenly hit something sharp with a shovel. "I think I found something," he said. "Is it gold?" I asked. "No." "Is it silver?" asked Alessia. "Nope," Mr. Burke said, as he looked at the shiny thing in his hand. "It's even more valuable than gold and silver. It's Gilver." "Gilver?" asked Ryan. "I never heard of Gilver." "What's Gilver?" asked Neil the nude kid. "Gilver is a combination of gold and silver," Mr. Burke said excitedly. "Yeehaw!" shouted Mr. Mackey. "It's more valuable than gold. It's more valuable than silver. It's Gilver! Yeehaw! We struck it rich!" Oh my. "Gilver! Gilver! Gilver!" In case you were wondering, all the teachers were shouting Gilver. "This place is filled with the stuff," said Mr. Burke. "It's a bonanza." "We hit pay dirt," shouted Mr. Mackey, jumping up and down and clapping his hands. "There must be millions of dollars worth of Gilver down here." "Billions," shouted Miss Small. "Trillions," shouted Mr. Granite. "Do you have any idea what that means for our school?" said Mrs. Jaffe. "We can bring back the arts and music programs. We can buy new computers and smartboards for every classroom," shouted Mrs. Yonkers. "We can turn the water fountains back on," shouted Miss Leakey. "We can buy toilet paper for the bathroom," shouted Miss Lazar. "Yeehaw!" yelled the rest of the teachers. All our problems were solved. Chapter 9. The Gold Rush. The teachers filled bag after bag with Gilver and carried the bags out of the hole. Mr. Burke told us not to say a word about the Gilver to anyone, but it didn't matter. Thanks to all the yelling and shouting, word had already gotten out. 5 minutes later, people in overalls and hard hats with shovels were streaming into the playground from all directions. Some of them came on donkeys. Some of them even came on dog sleds. Some were in covered wagons. I guess they rented them. The next thing we knew, the playground was filled with tents and people making campfires, cooking victuals, and playing harmonicas. It was a real Kodak moment. "Yeehaw!" one guy said. "I'm a hankering to get me a heap of that there Gilver." "Hey, we were right first, you no good rascal," said Mr. Mackey. "It's our Gilver." "Finders keepers," said another guy. "This is a public school, you varmint, so it's public property." It looked like a fight was going to break out, but that's when the weirdest thing in the history of the world happened. Channel 7 News is on its way. 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 In case you were wondering, everybody was saying that Channel 7 News was on its way. TV cameras, shrieked Andrea. How's my hair look? Eek! We're gonna be famous, shrieked Emily. Sure enough, a few minutes later, a big van pulled up with Channel 7 News written on the side. And you'll never believe who got out of the van. It was Mrs. Lilly, this reporter who helped us make a newspaper about our school. Some guys from the news van set up the equipment, and Mrs. Lilly stood next to Mr. Burke. This is Mrs. Lilly with Channel 7 News, she said into the microphone. I'm reporting live from elementary school where Gilver, a rare combination of gold and silver, has been found in the playground. With me is Mr. Burke, the school groundskeeper. You were the one who discovered the Gilver, Mr. Burke. Tell us how you feel right now. I feel like I could eat corn on the cob through a picket fence, said Mr. Burke. I beg your pardon, said Mrs. Lilly. What I mean is, right now, I could just about hit a bull's backside with a handful of banjos. I'm sorry. I don't understand, said Mrs. Lilly. All I'm a-saying is, I feel like I could bluff a buzzard off a meat wagon right now. Uh-huh, said Mrs. Lilly. I have no idea what you're saying. What's a meat wagon? What's the matter, ma'am? Asked Mr. Burke. Don't you speak English? Mrs. Lilly was going to ask Mr. Burke more questions, but you'll never believe in 1,100,000 years who came running in front of the camera at that moment. I'm not going to tell you. Okay, I'll tell you. But you have to read the next chapter to find out. Na-na-na-boo-boo on you. Chapter 10. Violins are bad for children. It was Mayor Hubble. He grabbed the microphone from Mrs. Lilly. His Secret Service agents shoved Mr. Burke away from the camera. I'm happy to announce, said the mayor, that all the gold and Gilver found on school property belongs to the city. We will use it to balance the budget, blah, 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 blah. Create new jobs, blah, 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 blah. Fix the roads, blah, 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 blah. Cut taxes, blah, 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 blah. This great country, blah, 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 blah. And furthermore, blah, 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 blah. Long as this is going on, blah, 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 blah. Wake me up when it's over, blah, 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 blah. He yammered on for about 1,100,000 hours. I thought I was going to die of old age before he stopped. In conclusion, the mayor finally said, vote for me on election day. Thank you. Mrs. Lilly and the Channel 7 guys turned off the cameras and packed up their gear and drove away in their van. Okay, the show's over, said Mayor Hubble. Everybody go home now. I'll take care of this Gilver, and all you teachers get back to class. You should be ashamed of yourselves. The Secret Service agent started to load the bags of gold and Gilver into the trunk of Mayor Hubble's limo. The teachers were sad. They had worked really hard to dig up the gold and Gilver. Now Mayor Hubble was taking it away. We wouldn't be able to fix up the school. We wouldn't be able to bring back the art and music programs. we wouldn't have any toilet paper. Bummer in the summer. This was the worst thing to ever happen since TV turn-off week. We all started walking back into the school. That's when the most amazing thing in the history of the world happened. In the distance, at the other end of the playground, a tall, mysterious stranger appeared. He was walking towards us in slow motion, and he was bald. It was Mr. Klutz. Mr. Klutz! Mr. Klutz! Mr. Klutz! Mr. Klutz! In case you were wondering, everybody was shouting, Mr. Klutz! He stopped about 20 feet from Mayor Hubble. Klutz, said the mayor. What in blazes are you doing here? They let me out of principal's camp early, said Mr. Klutz. The jig's up, Mayor. Give us back the golden gilver. It don't belong to you. Who's going to make me? The mayor asked. Ooh, everybody said. I reckon I am, said Mr. Klutz, because you're getting too big for your britches. Ooh! Smile when you say that, said the mayor. Mayor Hubble looked at Mr. Klutz. Mr. Klutz looked at Mayor Hubble. All the kids and teachers looked at Mr. Klutz and Mayor Hubble. Nobody was saying anything. A tumbleweed rolled by. The gilver belongs to my teachers and my school, said Mr. Klutz. I reckon you're trying to steal it and keep it for yourself. You're lying like a rug, Klutz, said Mr. Hubble. And you're so crooked you could swallow nails and spit out corkscrews, said Mr. Klutz. Just give me back the gilver and nobody's going to get hurt. Nothing doing, said Mayor Hubble. I'm afraid this playground ain't big enough for the both of us, Klutz. Ooh. Then I'm going to have to give you a whomping you ain't never going to forget, Mayor, said Mr. Klutz. 'Cause you're a bad egg. Ooh. I'm going to kick your butt so hard they're going to need a team of surgeons to remove my boot, said Mayor Hubble. Ooh, everybody yelled. Mr. Klutz and Mayor Hubble were really mad. They started walking toward each other in slow motion. It looked like... Break. It's okay to say but grown-ups get mad when you say but. Nobody knows why. And break. They were about to fight. But you'll never believe who ran out of and stood between them. It was Andrea Young, Little Miss Perfect herself. The human homework machine. Stop! Andrea shouted, holding up her hands. There's no need to resort to violence. Why is everybody always talking about violins, I asked. Are you gonna fight with musical instruments? They should fight with tubas. That'd be cool. Not violins, everybody shouted at me. Violence. Oh, I said. Why didn't you say so? Break. Tuba, spelled backwards, is a butt. End break. Suddenly, Mr. Klutz pushed his way to the front of the crowd. The little lady's right, he said. I say we solve this the old-fashioned way. With a duel. A duel! A duel! A duel! A duel! In case you were wondering, everybody was saying a duel. Guns are violent, Mr. Burke said, Andrea. I ain't talking about a duel with guns, said Mr. Burke. I'm talking about a modern-day duel with cell phones. Chapter 11, The Duel. Mr. Burke explained the rules of the duel to everybody. Then the mayor and Mr. Klutz would each write their cell phone number on a piece of paper, swap the papers, then they would stand back to back. They would each walk 10 paces forward, then they would turn around, grab their cell phones, and dial each other's number as fast as they possibly could. Whichever cell phone rang first would be the loser. The other one would get to keep all the gold and silver. "It's a deal," said Mayor Hubble. "Deal," said Mr. Klutz. "I'm a betting my smartphone is smarter than your smartphone." "I'm warning you," said the mayor. "I'm pretty quick on the dial." "No namby-pamby Gilver rustler can outdial me," said Mr. Klutz. Mr. Burke told Mr. Klutz and Mayor Hubble to stand back to back. "Look, their butts are touching," I whispered. "Quiet, Harlow," shouted Andrea. "Ready, set, go," said Mr. Burke. Mr. Klutz and Mayor Hubble started pacing away from each other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then they both spun around. "Fill your hand, you yellow-bellied phone slinger," shouted Mr. Klutz. Both of them dialed their phones. Both of them pulled their phones off their belt loops and started punching in numbers frantically. Then they pointed their phones at each other and waited for one of them to ring. "I know what you're thinking," Mr. Klutz said. "Did you punch in 7 numbers or 6? Well, to tell you the truth, I was in all the excitement, I kind of done lost track myself. But you've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?" And then Mr. Klutz's cell phone started playing the Hokey Pokey. "Ooh!" he shouted. "Ha! Nice try, Klutz," Mayor Hubble said, blowing on his phone. "Better luck next time. Now all the gold and silver is mine. Admit it, admit it." "I must skedaddle." And the mayor got into his limo with his Secret Service agents and drove away. For a second, nobody moved. We were all in shock. Then Mr. Mackey stepped forward. "Dag nabbit," he shouted. "That scallywag done vamoosed with our gold and silver. If I get my hands on him, I'm a-gonna stretch that no-good outlaw's neck. Come on, fellers. We'll hit him off at the pass. Who's with me?" "No thanks," said Mrs. Rupee. "I've had enough violence for one day." "Violence is not the answer," said Miss Laney. "You can't solve problems with violence," said Mr. Granite. "Why is everybody always talking about violins?" "What in tarnation?" shouted Mr. Mackey. "Ain't you cowpokes going to help me chase down that varmint?" Mr. Burke didn't look worried. He was leaning against the fence and picking his teeth with a toothpick. Unless the question is, name a musical instrument with 4 strings. "Hold your horses, partner," he said. "Let that old coot go." "Let him go?" Mr. Mackey shouted. "Why, what about the silver?" Gilver, said Mr. Burke. Ain't no such a thing as Gilver. I made that stuff up. Gilver is just shiny pieces of glass I scattered around the playground. What about the gold? Asked Mr. Mackey. Painted rocks, said Mr. Burke. They ain't worth a plug nickel. So you planted all this stuff, Mr. Burke? Asked Mr. Klutz. Why? Oh, I figured the mayor don't care a lick about balancing no budget, he said. So, he just wants to get rid of stuff he don't like. Art, music, teachers, school. So, I planted that golden Gilver in the playground. I figured it was only a matter of time before that greedy bunco artist, would try to snatch it. The cops will pick him up soon enough. Well, that's pretty much what happened. The police tracked down Mayor Hubble and took him to jail. Maybe he'll be there for the rest of his life. Maybe we'll raise enough money to bring back the art and music programs. Maybe all the men will shave their beards and stop saying yeehaw. Maybe everybody will stop talking about violins. Maybe they'll turn the water fountains back on and put toilet paper back in the bathroom. Maybe we'll get the monkey bars back from Rent a Monkey Bar. Maybe the teachers will get to keep the hot tub that isn't in the staff room. Maybe Mr. Klutz and Mr. Burke will fight on the seesaw. Maybe I'll become a principal and toast marshmallows. Maybe cannibal zombies will come out from the Underground Railroad and eat our brains. Maybe there will be a TV channel that shows nothing but stuff being blown up all day long. Maybe they'll be able to fill the big hole in the playground. But it won't be easy. Well, that was fun, wasn't it, partner? Yeehaw! Anyway, never thought I'd get to read a book like that. Anyhow, have yourselves a good July. I'm sure we'll be back in a week or two with another edition of My Weirder School, or something very similar to it. Until then, have yourselves a good summer, and we'll see all of y'all next time.
Speech on. Take picture. Take picture. Take picture. Stop. 1 hour. Stop recording video.